The early morning sun barely broke through the heavy clouds above the village, casting long shadows across the rubble-strewn streets. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling with each faint gust of wind. Sergeant Emily Carter moved cautiously, every step measured, her boots crunching lightly on broken bricks and scattered debris. Her unit had been ambushed hours earlier. She had been separated during the chaos, forced to navigate the labyrinth of narrow alleys and crumbling structures alone. Her heart thudded against her chest, but her training told her that panic was a liability she could not afford. She pressed herself against the cold, pitted wall of what had once been a small shop. The faded paint peeled in jagged strips, and shards of glass glimmered in the weak sunlight. Her eyes scanned every detail, the flicker of movement in broken windows, the shifting of shadows behind half-destroyed walls, the faint glint of metal where an enemy soldier might be hiding. She had learned to read the battlefield like a living map, and every creak of floorboards or distant echo was a clue. Emily's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, the weight of the pistol familiar and comforting. She had trained for moments like this for years, yet nothing could fully prepare her for the raw unpredictability of combat. Her breath was steady, but her mind was alive with possibilities. Every alley, every doorway, every rooftop was a potential trap, and she knew that one wrong move could end her life in an instant. As she moved deeper into the village, she noticed the signs of recent activity. Footprints in the dirt indicated the enemy had been moving here just minutes ago. Discarded equipment, a cracked helmet, a torn uniform hinted at hurried retreats or ambushes. Her instincts sharpened. Emily adjusted her pace, moving quietly but deliberately, her eyes constantly flicking to the corners of her vision. She was aware of the civilians in the area, some peering cautiously from behind shuttered windows, their eyes wide with fear. She could not allow them to be collateral damage. A sudden sound of faint scuff of a boot against stone made her freeze mid-step. Her pulse spiked, every muscle tensed, every nerve alert. She slowly raised her weapon, the suppressor dampening the sharpness of the trigger pull. From behind a half-destroyed doorway, a figure emerged. A man, rough and weathered, his eyes dark with malice, lunged forward. Before she could react fully, a cold steel barrel pressed firmly against her temple. Time seemed to slow. The world narrowed to the pressure of the gun, the heat of the man's breath, and the intensity of his gaze. Emily's mind raced, analyzing every detail. The enemy expected fear. He expected submission. But in that instant, a different thought crystallized. Fear, she realized, could be a weapon if harnessed correctly. Her body remained frozen, but her mind began calculating every possible outcome, the angles of attack, potential escape routes, nearby cover, and the positions of unseen enemies. The man whispered something, his words unintelligible over the pounding of Emily's heart. He pressed closer, his grip tightening. Emily noticed his finger twitch near the trigger. She could feel the slight tremor in his hand, the hesitation that came from underestimating her. In that hesitation, she saw opportunity. A flicker of movement from a nearby rooftop, a shadow, too deliberate to be random, caught her eye. There were others here, hiding, watching, waiting for her to falter. But she would not falter. Emily's training had drilled her for this. Years of simulations, drills, and real-world skirmishes coalesced into instinct. She shifted her weight subtly, angling her body just enough to create leverage. Her eyes locked on the man's weaknesses, the tension in his stance, the slight imbalance in his grip, the way his focus was solely on her. Every second stretched, every heartbeat loud in her ears. She could almost feel the world holding its breath with her. Behind the immediate threat, Emily's peripheral vision caught the faint outlines of civilians huddled in doorways, peering through cracks. She needed to protect them, but first she had to survive. She whispered softly, not to the man but to herself, a mantra she had learned during training. Control the moment, control the battlefield. The words grounded her. They reminded her that even in the face of death, she had agency. A small, deliberate movement, an adjustment of her foot, a subtle shift in her hips, gave her just enough leverage. Her hand, steady as steel, gripped the man's wrist. With a sudden, precise motion, she twisted, redirecting the gun away from her temple. The man stumbled backward, shocked by her audacity. Emily seized the opening, her training guiding her in perfect synchronization. Her other hand reached for the attacker's arm, controlling his movements, keeping him off balance. In the few seconds that followed, she surveyed the area. There were two more figures, enemy combatants, hidden behind debris, their weapons raised. Emily's mind calculated trajectories, firing angles, and potential tactics. She did not panic. Panic was for the untrained. She signaled subtly, a hand gesture practiced countless times, indicating a strategic retreat while maintaining readiness to strike. Every movement was deliberate, precise, and designed to maximize her control while minimizing risk. The tension was palpable, electric, as if the village itself were aware of the confrontation. Emily's senses were heightened beyond normal perception. The faint rustle of a flag in the wind, the distant bark of a dog, even the rhythm of her own breathing became part of the battlefield's symphony. She knew that a single mistake could cost her life. But she also knew that hesitation was deadlier than action. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, glinting off broken glass and rusted metal, Emily Carter made a choice. She would not be a victim. She would turn the tables. The seconds that seemed to stretch into eternity were her proving ground. Every calculation, every subtle movement, every heartbeat was leading to a moment of decisive action. The gun pressed to her head was no longer a symbol of her vulnerability. It was the catalyst for her dominance. And in that moment, as the enemy's eyes widened in disbelief, Emily realized something profound. Control was not given. It was taken. The village, the alleys, the shadows, they were all hers, if she had the courage and skill to seize them. And seize them she would. Time slowed, yet raced forward simultaneously, as Sergeant Emily Carter's mind worked faster than her heart could beat. With the cold barrel pressing into her temple, she observed everything with meticulous attention. The alley seemed impossibly narrow, walls caving in like silent sentinels, shadows stretching and contracting as the wind swept through broken rooftops. Dust swirled, catching the faint sunlight and every movement of debris, of stray animals, of distant civilians registered in her mind as a potential threat or advantage. Seconds, she realized, could decide life or death, and she would not waste a single one. Her eyes flicked across the man holding the gun. He was young, perhaps barely 25, but experienced enough to appear confident. His grip on the weapon was tight, but not perfect. The knuckles on his right hand were white, his wrist slightly off axis. He had trained, but in his overconfidence lay vulnerability. Emily noted his stance, the subtle forward lean, the position of his feet, the slight shift in his weight whenever he adjusted the gun against her head. Each detail was a thread she could pull to unravel the situation. Behind him, shadows hinted at additional threats. Emily could sense movement. Two more combatants hidden among the rubble and broken structures, likely coordinating their ambush. They had underestimated her, she could tell, relying on intimidation rather than strategy. That miscalculation was her opening. Her mind raced through options: distraction, maneuver, negotiation, or outright confrontation. She rejected fear entirely. Fear could paralyze, but clarity could save lives. Emily's training kicked in, the years of grueling drills and battlefield experience combining into instinctual action. She had learned to read the smallest cues, a twitch of an eyebrow, the slight hitch in a shoulder, the tightening of a jaw. These details revealed more about intent than words ever could. The man holding the gun was calculating, waiting for hesitation, expecting submission. But Emily would not give it. Submission was weakness, and she had none. Slowly, deliberately, she whispered a wordless sound, a soft intake of breath that drew the attacker's attention, just enough to shift his focus slightly. Her eyes scanned rapidly. A narrow alley to the left offered cover, broken crates forming a jagged barrier. A pile of bricks at the far end of the street could serve as both shield and weapon if needed. A small child peered from behind a doorway, frozen with wide eyes. Emily's mind cataloged every element: enemy positions, civilian locations, escape routes, all in a fraction of a second. The first critical thought crystallized. She needed to destabilize him. The barrel pressed against her temple was a threat, yes, but it also tethered him to her movements. Any subtle shift in her body could force him to adjust, creating imbalance. She adjusted her foot slightly, pivoting on the ball of her right shoe. The change was imperceptible to a casual observer, but it caused a faint reaction, a blink, a twitch. Tiny movements became her advantage. Emily's gaze flicked beyond the immediate threat. 2 additional insurgents crouched behind shattered walls, weapons raised. Their eyes, barely visible through the debris, were locked on her. She counted their positions in her mind, one slightly left, one behind a partially collapsed doorway. Both underestimated her ability to respond. They were waiting for the signal, for the moment she faltered. She would not falter. Every second she stayed calm, every heartbeat she controlled, increased her leverage over the entire battlefield. Her mind ran through scenarios at lightning speed. If she could disarm this man, neutralize him without alerting the others, she could shift the momentum entirely. But miscalculation would be fatal. She remembered the drills. Redirect the energy, use leverage, anticipate the attacker's reflexes, and always maintain awareness of surrounding threats. Each drill, each simulation, each past skirmish was a layer of armor. Now, she trusted it implicitly. Emily's hand, steady as a surgeon's, brushed subtly against the attacker's wrist. She applied almost imperceptible pressure, enough to feel his response, but not trigger immediate resistance. Her body remained frozen, but her mind danced with calculation. The angle of force, the position of her feet, the potential reactions of nearby enemies. The seconds stretched unnaturally long, yet each one passed in a heartbeat. A small noise, a distant clatter of metal, perhaps a falling pipe or a loose shutter drew the attacker's attention momentarily. Emily seized it. She leaned forward slightly, shifting her body just enough to unbalance him. His grip faltered. His eyes widened, realizing her audacity. In that split second, she reached out with precision, redirecting the gun and twisting his wrist. A sudden, controlled movement brought the weapon slightly away from her temple, giving her the microsecond she needed. Her mind calculated the next steps even as adrenaline surged. She had the opening, but the danger remained. The other 2 insurgents would respond quickly if they realized the situation was turning. Emily considered every possible reaction. They could fire immediately, retreat to regroup, or attempt to flank her. She needed to control the narrative of the battlefield before they could act. Her breathing remained calm, controlled, a deliberate rhythm to maintain focus. Panic would betray her. Composure would empower her. The young attacker stumbled, momentarily off balance, his confidence shaken. Emily did not hesitate. She applied her training again, twisting the gun hand while shifting her weight backward into the nearest cover. A broken wall, littered with bricks and debris. The move was fluid, practiced, yet executed in a high-pressure real-world scenario. Every fiber of her being was focused on the task, survive, disarm, control. A sudden voice in the alley, a shout in a language she did not fully understand, reminded her that time was short. The other combatants were moving. Shadows shifted. Dust swirled in the air, catching the weak sunlight, creating a haze that distorted depth and distance. Emily's mind accounted for every variable: angles, weapon ranges, potential civilian positions, and environmental obstacles. She realized that in these moments, seconds were more valuable than minutes, and milliseconds could mean the difference between life and death. She executed another subtle adjustment, this time leveraging her elbow and hip to push the attacker further off balance while redirecting the gun entirely away from her. The man stumbled into a pile of debris, cursing and momentarily disoriented. Emily's eyes flicked to the other two insurgents. One had taken a step forward, unsure, hesitant. The other was crouched, assessing, tense but uncertain. Her heart pounded, but her movements remained precise, her control absolute. In that stretch of seconds that felt like hours, Emily realized the profound truth of combat. Control was not about weapons alone. It was about mind, body, awareness, and courage. The gun at her head, meant to intimidate, had instead sharpened her senses, focused her instincts, and crystallized her tactical thinking. Each heartbeat, each breath, each micro-movement was now part of a deliberate sequence designed to turn the tide. The young attacker regained his footing, eyes wide with disbelief. Emily's presence radiated calm and authority, not fear. She whispered no words, but her stance, her precision, and her readiness spoke volumes. The other insurgents hesitated, sensing the shift in power. The moment that began as imminent death was transforming. She was no longer a target. She was an operator, calculating every possible variable, ready to dictate the next sequence. Emily's mind raced with contingencies. If the attacker lunged again, if the others fired simultaneously, if civilians panicked. Every possibility had a response, a counter, a controlled action. The seconds, though fleeting in ordinary terms, became an arena where skill, courage, and awareness defined survival. She had transformed terror into focus, threat into opportunity. And in that tense, electrifying instant, Emily Carter realized that the seconds pressing against her, like weight and time, were no longer her enemy. They were her weapon. The alleyway, once oppressive with threat, now became Emily Carter's stage. The attacker at her temple, once a symbol of imminent death, now staggered from the controlled maneuver she had executed. The sudden shift in momentum was almost tangible, as if the alley itself acknowledged her claim to command. Dust and debris hung in the air like a curtain, filtering the sunlight and blurring the edges of reality. Emily's pulse had steadied into a rhythm of acute focus. Every movement she made was precise, deliberate, and strategic. Her attacker lunged once more, desperate to regain dominance. Emily anticipated the motion before it fully manifested. With a swift pivot, she redirected his weight against the rubble-strewn wall, simultaneously controlling the gun hand while using her own momentum to destabilize him further. He stumbled off balance and cursed under his breath. In those moments, Emily's body became a conduit for tactical calculation. She was the eye of a storm, calm while chaos raged around her. Her mind assessed the wider battlefield, even as she executed these rapid maneuvers. The two other insurgents remained crouched, partially concealed by debris, unsure of how to act. Emily's peripheral vision caught them, but she did not flinch. She had trained for scenarios like this split-second reactions, anticipating enemy moves and creating openings out of the smallest miscalculations. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement had its purpose. The seconds she once feared had become allies in her strategy. She shifted slightly, pushing her attacker backward into a pile of broken crates. The gun swung harmlessly, momentarily pointed at nothing, and she seized the microsecond to gain full control. Her hands locked around his wrists, leveraging his weight against him, and she twisted him to the ground with careful force. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. He had expected compliance, not resistance. Emily's calm was more terrifying than any gunfire and unshakable presence in the chaos. Her mind raced beyond the immediate threat. She knew the other two insurgents could react within seconds. Their hesitation was her advantage, but it would not last. Emily scanned the environment. A narrow side alley to her left could provide partial cover. A stack of debris in front could be used as a shield, and a collapsed wall to her right could serve as a pivot point for movement. She mapped the terrain in her mind, visualizing paths of attack and retreat simultaneously. She was orchestrating the battlefield while still in the eye of danger. Emily's breathing remained steady. Every exhale was calculated, every inhale measured. Adrenaline surged, but it sharpened her focus rather than clouding it. She remembered her training: control energy, exploit weakness, predict reaction. The young attacker on the ground struggled, attempting to regain his footing, but Emily anticipated each attempt, countering subtly, methodically. She was no longer reactive. She was proactive. The initiative had shifted, and the enemy sensed it immediately. She could see the hesitation in the eyes of the other two insurgents now. They had been trained to assume fear in their target, to anticipate surrender under threat. Emily offered neither. Her calm, her decisive movements, and her unwavering focus created confusion and doubt. She had become not just a target, but a commander, dictating the flow of the encounter. Every tactical decision she made now rippled outward, affecting the actions of everyone in the alley. With a swift motion, Emily disarmed the attacker completely, twisting the gun from his hands and pushing him backward into the rubble. He flailed, surprised and off balance. Emily's hands moved like lightning, subduing him with precise pressure points and controlled leverage. The other insurgents hesitated, caught between fear and instinct. Emily did not give them time to act. She had to maintain dominance. Hesitation would be lethal. She pivoted, using the rubble as cover while keeping her senses attuned to the enemy. The narrow alley amplified every sound: the shuffle of boots, the scrape of metal, the distant cry of a civilian startled by the commotion. Emily used these sensory cues to predict movements, to calculate trajectories, and to position herself advantageously. Her eyes scanned constantly, noting every shadow and flicker of motion. The battlefield was alive, and she was fully engaged with it. Emily's voice broke the tension, low and commanding, though the words were barely audible over the chaos. "Step out slowly." Hands visible. Her tone carried authority, the unmistakable calm of someone in control. The first insurgent's eyes flickered toward her, hesitation written across his face. Emily's command was more than verbal. It was psychological warfare. Confidence can unsettle even the most battle-hardened opponent, and she wielded it like a weapon. She didn't wait for compliance. With precise, fluid movements, she neutralized the first insurgent's potential actions, using momentum and leverage rather than brute force. Her body moved like a machine, every motion honed by hours of training and years of experience. She maintained her awareness of the alley, the debris, the civilians watching cautiously from windows, and the other insurgent who had not yet fully committed. Every element had a role in her calculation. Emily's tactical mind continued to adapt. She shifted her position, creating angles that maximized her cover while minimizing exposure. She assessed the distance to the other insurgent, noted possible flanking positions, and anticipated reinforcements that could arrive at any moment. Her focus was absolute. She was no longer a single soldier in danger. She was an orchestrator of events, commanding both space and time in the alley. Her opponent, struggling to regain composure, tried a desperate lunge. Emily predicted the move and redirected it seamlessly, using leverage to push him off balance again. The gun, once pressed to her temple, was now out of reach, irrelevant. She had inverted the power dynamic in mere seconds. The energy of the alley shifted the enemy, sensed their loss of control. Her presence dominated every inch of space, and her calm radiated an unspoken warning. Any misstep would be met with immediate consequence. Emily glanced quickly at the other insurgent, crouched and tense, unsure of whether to engage. She calculated timing, distance, and angle, preparing for both attack and defense. Her awareness extended beyond physical threats. Civilians, startled and frightened, peered from behind debris and broken doors. She factored them into her decisions, ensuring no collateral harm while maintaining tactical superiority. Every element of the environment was part of the battlefield, every movement a variable to consider. With precise coordination, Emily moved the first insurgent to a position where he could do no immediate harm. Her body acted instinctively, but her mind was fully analytical. The second insurgent reacted slowly, his hesitation growing as Emily's confidence radiated outward. She used this moment to take further control, adjusting her stance, planning her next moves, and securing the immediate vicinity. Her tactical awareness had transformed a life-threatening situation into a controlled operation. In those critical moments, Emily Carter became more than a soldier under threat. She became a commander of events, a strategist operating under pressure, and a force to be reckoned with. Her mind processed possibilities faster than anyone around her. Her body executed them flawlessly, and the enemy's cohesion disintegrated before her eyes. The seconds that had once felt like endless torment had now become her instrument of power. And in that alley, amidst dust, rubble, and fear, the tactical shift was complete. Emily Carter was no longer reacting to death, she was dictating the course of it, controlling the battlefield from a position of absolute composure and precision. Word count, approximately 1,200. The alley, once a labyrinth of threats and uncertainty, now seemed to bend to Emily Carter's will. The immediate danger, the attacker who had pressed a gun to her head, was disoriented, sprawled across broken bricks and debris. But Emily did not pause to revel in her momentary victory. She knew that control over one enemy meant little if the rest remained a threat. Her eyes scanned the street, the alleyways, the shattered doorways and broken rooftops. Enemy combatants could be anywhere, hiding, waiting to exploit a single lapse. Emily's breathing remained steady, deliberate. Years of military training had taught her that the battlefield demanded a balance of instinct and intellect. Her hands were ready, her stance firm, and her mind calculated. She needed to take control not just of her immediate assailant, but of the entire area. The seconds she had spent turning the tables on her attacker had created an opening, but she could not let it close. She had to expand it into a decisive advantage. Her peripheral vision caught movement in a crumbling building across the street. Two more insurgents were emerging, weapons raised but cautious, clearly unsure of how to respond. Emily's mind raced. She quickly scanned the terrain for cover, angles of fire, and opportunities for psychological dominance. She noted the civilians huddled behind walls, peering through cracks, frozen by fear. Their safety was her responsibility, as much as her own survival. Every decision had to account for friend, foe, and innocent alike. She crouched slightly behind the rubble, her posture low but commanding. Emily's eyes locked on her team, scattered in the distance, regrouping and cautiously advancing under cover. She raised a hand, signaling precise movements, a subtle, practiced code that directed her soldiers without exposing her own position unnecessarily. Each gesture was deliberate, each signal calculated to communicate intent, position, and threat assessment. Her team responded immediately, moving in perfect synchronization as if guided by an unseen hand. Emily's mind orchestrated a series of rapid calculations. The number of enemy combatants, their positions, their probable reactions, and the angles of potential counterattack. She factored in the architecture of the village, the narrow alleys, crumbling walls, uneven rooftops, and debris piles. Each element could be an advantage or a hazard, depending on how it was used. Emily's training allowed her to see possibilities others would overlook, and she exploited every one. The first insurgent, still recovering from Emily's earlier maneuver, began to rise. She kept him off balance with subtle pressure points and leverage, forcing him to retreat toward a corner where he posed less threat. Meanwhile, the two emerging insurgents froze, uncertainty in their eyes. Emily seized the psychological advantage. She had shifted from reacting to commanding, and the enemy sensed it. Her calm demeanor, precise movements, and commanding presence were unnerving. Hesitation was now theirs. Initiative was hers. Emily's voice, low but firm, carried across the alley. "Drop your weapons. Move slowly." The command was simple, yet authoritative, imbued with a confidence that left no room for doubt. One of the insurgents flinched, unsure, while the other hesitated, weighing options she had already anticipated. She didn't wait for compliance. She forced action through presence, positioning, and the subtle threat of immediate consequence. Every movement, every gesture, was designed to dictate the flow of events. Her team had begun advancing, taking positions based on her hand signals. They covered potential escape routes for the enemy while also securing civilians, creating a controlled environment where Emily's influence extended across the battlefield. She continued to scan, reassess, and adjust, her mind functioning at a level that balanced acute situational awareness with long-term strategy. Every decision was rapid, yet deliberate. Each heartbeat counted as much as a minute of thought. Emily moved with a fluidity born of instinct and calculation, transitioning from one position to another, always maintaining cover while keeping the enemy in her sight. She accounted for sight lines, angles of fire, and environmental hazards. Each step was deliberate, each motion purposeful. The enemy's hesitation grew. Uncertainty spread through their ranks. They had expected fear and submission, but instead they faced composure, precision, and tactical dominance. She caught sight of a shadow moving along a rooftop, a sniper, perhaps, or a scout reporting back to hidden reinforcements. Emily adjusted her position, signaling her team to cover the angle while she focused on the immediate threats. Her mind mapped multiple contingencies. If the insurgents retreated, where would they go? If reinforcements arrived, how would she manage them? Each possibility was accounted for. She was not merely surviving. She was orchestrating, commanding, and controlling the battlefield. Emily's first priority remained the safety of civilians. She noted a small group hiding behind a partially collapsed wall, eyes wide with terror. She instructed a nearby soldier, using hand signals, to provide cover and guide the civilians to safer ground. Every element of the environment, every person within it, was integrated into her tactical calculations. She was creating a zone of control, one where fear had been replaced with order, and chaos became manageable. The two insurgents still stood frozen, indecision etched across their faces. Emily advanced slowly, maintaining cover, projecting dominance, and signaling her team simultaneously. Her hand gestures directed movement, fire coverage, and containment. Each subtle motion communicated strategy, inspiring confidence in her soldiers while sowing doubt in the enemy. In that narrow alley, Emily's presence alone had shifted the balance. She was no longer a participant. She was the orchestrator. She approached the first insurgent, still disoriented from earlier maneuvers, and used precise leverage to force him to the ground again, keeping him under control without lethal force. The other two insurgents, now realizing the situation had turned against them, began to falter further. Emily's eyes scanned constantly for additional threats while maintaining dominance over the immediate area. She understood that the difference between control and chaos lay in timing, decisiveness, and clarity of purpose. The soldiers responding to her signals moved with near-perfect coordination. They positioned themselves along vantage points and covered potential escape routes, effectively boxing the enemy into positions that minimized risk to civilians while maximizing tactical advantage. Emily's guidance was subtle yet commanding. Each action reinforced the psychological shift. She had seized not just control of her immediate attacker, but of the entire tactical environment. Emily's mind anticipated the enemy's next moves. The insurgents would likely attempt to regroup, perhaps even flee, but any action would be calculated, observed, and countered. She shifted slightly, adjusting her stance to maximize visibility, minimize exposure, and maintain readiness to strike or react. Her entire body communicated authority and precision, the embodiment of battlefield dominance. She then issued low verbal commands, precise and authoritative. Hands where I can see them. Move slowly. Step back one at a time. Her voice was calm, unwavering, and deliberate. The effect was immediate. One insurgent began to comply, albeit cautiously, while the other hesitated, clearly reassessing the risk. Emily's presence, her timing, and her calculated actions had turned imminent danger into an opportunity for absolute control. Even amidst the dust, smoke, and distant echoes of the larger battlefield, Emily maintained perfect situational awareness. Civilians were secured, enemy combatants were neutralized or contained, and her team was perfectly coordinated. She had shifted from being a target to being the pivot around which the entire engagement now rotated. Her tactical shift was complete, her command undisputed, and her authority absolute. In those moments, Emily realized the truth of battlefield leadership. It was not about brute force alone. It was about awareness, precision, timing, and psychological dominance. It was about projecting calm under pressure, anticipating movements before they occurred, and guiding allies and enemies alike through the chaos of combat. She had transformed fear into control, danger into order, and seconds of terror into a foundation for victory. The alley, once a place of imminent death, now bore witness to Emily Carter's mastery. Her team followed her guidance. Civilians were safe, and the remaining insurgents were contained. She moved fluidly among her soldiers, signaling, guiding, and commanding. Every decision, every motion, every heartbeat was synchronized with the broader strategy. The tactical shift was no longer theoretical. It had become a reality, shaping the battlefield itself. And in that moment, Sergeant Emily Carter understood the full measure of her capability. She was no longer merely surviving. She was leading, controlling, and directing the outcome of a situation that moments ago had threatened to consume her entirely. She had taken command, and nothing in that alley would challenge her authority again. The first rays of sunlight pierced the smoky haze lingering over the village, glinting off broken glass and rusted metal. Dust swirled around shattered walls, drifting through the narrow alleys like ghostly specters. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at the center of the alley, surveying the aftermath of her earlier maneuvers. The insurgents who had once threatened her life were now disoriented, hesitating in their movements, their confidence fractured. She had taken command, and the battlefield responded to her presence. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Fear had begun to ripple through the enemy ranks. Her team, disciplined and precise, moved with fluid coordination, following her hand signals and subtle verbal commands. Each soldier advanced strategically, covering angles of fire and potential escape routes while ensuring civilian safety. Emily had transformed the alley from a trap into a controlled zone. Every building, every debris pile, every crumbling wall was accounted for. The insurgents scrambled to regroup, their formation fractured, the cohesion that had made them dangerous, now collapsing under her influence. Emily noted the first signs of panic. One insurgent attempted to retreat down a narrow side street, only to be intercepted by a team member she had positioned minutes earlier. Another tried to regroup near the crumbling marketplace, but her hand signals coordinated the soldiers to cut off all viable escape routes. She moved with confidence, her eyes scanning constantly for new threats, her mind calculating trajectories, ranges, and angles with precision. Every motion she executed reinforced the psychological dominance she had established over the enemy. The remaining insurgents attempted to form a defensive line, but their hesitation and confusion betrayed them. They were reacting to her actions, not initiating their own strategy. Emily had anticipated this, and she exploited it fully. With a subtle gesture, she directed her team to advance in overlapping sectors of fire, ensuring that each insurgent's potential movement was contained. Bullets began to whiz past, precise and calculated, targeted to neutralize rather than maim. Her team moved seamlessly under her guidance, a coordinated force responding to her tactical orchestration. Even amidst the chaos, Emily maintained a calm exterior. Her eyes scanned the battlefield like a hawk, noting every movement. Civilians, still trembling behind broken walls, were safe under her team's supervision. She adjusted positions, signaled new advances, and anticipated enemy maneuvers. Her mind ran a constant loop of probability calculations. Where would they move? Which direction offered the best cover? How could she exploit their uncertainty? Each answer informed her next decision, every decision reinforcing her control over the engagement. She observed one insurgent crouched behind a collapsed wall, attempting to steady his aim. Emily signaled a soldier to suppress fire while she moved to a better vantage point. Her body was low, agile, and precise, navigating rubble with a grace that belied the chaos around her. She calculated her own line of sight, angles of attack, and potential threats, then signaled again. The insurgent froze, uncertainty overtaking aggression. He realized, too late, that he was no longer dictating events. Emily was. The psychological collapse of the enemy accelerated. One insurgent dropped his weapon, fear etched across his face. Another hesitated, then attempted to flee, only to find escape blocked by a team member perfectly positioned under Emily's direction. The remaining combatants scrambled, uncoordinated, desperate to regain some semblance of control. Emily's presence radiated authority. Every motion, every glance, every subtle adjustment of her stance reinforced the inevitability of their defeat. The alley had become her command center, the battlefield her instrument, and the insurgents her unwitting performers. Emily moved with deliberate precision, advancing behind cover while continuously scanning for threats. She noted the faint shimmer of sunlight reflecting off metal in the distance, a potential sniper nest. Adjusting her own position, she signaled two soldiers to provide suppressive cover while she navigated toward higher ground. Her team followed seamlessly, each soldier aware of their role, each movement synchronized with her overarching strategy. The enemy, increasingly fragmented and panicked, struggled to respond effectively. Her mind remained hyper-alert, analyzing every fragment of information. She noted a movement to the far end of the marketplace, a combatant attempting to rally others. Emily anticipated the maneuver, signaling a coordinated response. Two soldiers moved to intercept, while others provided covering fire. Within moments, the insurgents' attempt to regain control was neutralized. The remaining enemy fighters were either contained, fleeing, or surrendering. The collapse was complete, a cascade initiated by her decisive leadership and tactical foresight. Even as the chaos subsided, Emily's awareness did not waver. She moved through the alley, checking positions, ensuring no enemy was left capable of regrouping. Civilians were guided to safer locations, and her soldiers secured key vantage points. Emily had transformed a moment of personal threat into a battlefield-wide operation, turning fear and confusion into order and dominance. Her actions had not only neutralized the enemy, but also prevented potential collateral damage, a testament to her skill and precision. The insurgents who survived were fully demoralized, their attempts to resist futile. They had expected to dominate the encounter, to exploit fear, but Emily had inverted the dynamic entirely. She had anticipated every move, every hesitation, every instinctive reaction, turning seconds of terror into opportunities for control. Her team, inspired and coordinated, executed flawlessly under her guidance. What had begun as a life-threatening situation for one soldier had become a strategic victory for the entire unit. Emily surveyed the battlefield one final time. Rubble and debris littered the alley, the remnants of a struggle that had begun with death hanging at her temple. Smoke rose from broken walls, dust settled on shattered structures, and the enemy had either fled or been contained. Civilians peered cautiously from their hiding spots, safe thanks to her foresight. Her team gathered around her, faces flushed with adrenaline, yet aware that it was her leadership that had transformed chaos into victory. Even amidst the aftermath, Emily's mind was already processing the next steps. She noted potential follow-up threats, enemy reinforcements, sniper positions, and possible traps left behind. Her tactical awareness remained unbroken, a seamless extension of her instinct and training. Every soldier under her command trusted her implicitly, following her directions without hesitation. The collapse of the enemy was total, both physically and psychologically, a testament to her decisive action, strategic insight, and unparalleled composure under pressure. In that moment, Emily Carter understood the full scope of her impact. She had turned a potentially fatal encounter into a demonstration of leadership, tactical brilliance, and psychological dominance. Her actions had saved lives, secured civilians, and neutralized enemy forces with precision. The battlefield, once a place of imminent death, had been transformed by her presence into a controlled, strategic environment where her authority and skill dictated outcomes. The insurgents who survived would carry the memory of that alley, the sense of being outmaneuvered, outhought, and overpowered by a single soldier whose calm, calculated actions had unraveled their confidence completely. Emily's legacy, even before returning to base, was etched into the minds of friend and foe alike. What had begun as seconds of terror had evolved into a decisive, orchestrated collapse of the enemy, all under the command of Sergeant Emily Carter. And as the dust settled, she stood at the center of the alley, surveying the battlefield she had mastered. The enemy's cohesion was gone, her team was secure, civilians were safe, and her authority was undisputed. The collapse of the insurgents was not merely physical, it was total. Every hesitation, every misstep, every flicker of fear had been anticipated and exploited. Emily had transformed danger into control, chaos into strategy, and seconds of vulnerability into a lasting triumph. The echoes of gunfire still reverberated through the alley, mingling with the cries of civilians and the distant rumble of collapsing structures. Sergeant Emily Carter moved with purpose, every step measured, every glance precise. The insurgents' morale had collapsed, but the battlefield remained perilous. Sniper fire crackled from rooftops, ricocheting bullets embedded in walls, and pockets of enemy resistance lingered in the shadows. Emily's eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned for movement, cataloging threats and opportunities simultaneously. There was no room for hesitation. Every decision now could determine not only her survival, but that of her soldiers and the civilians scattered across the village. Emily's team had rallied around her, inspired by her composure and decisive actions. Soldiers advanced cautiously under her guidance, maintaining cover while assessing threats. Emily moved among them, giving hand signals, short verbal commands, and gestures that orchestrated their positioning. Her presence radiated authority. Even the most battle-hardened veterans followed her lead with complete confidence. The team had transitioned from reacting to controlling, but it was Emily's vision that held the operation together. Each soldier became an extension of her strategy, every action synchronized to maintain dominance over the battlefield. Amid the chaos, Emily spotted a young soldier pinned behind a half-collapsed wall. Bullets shredded the air around him as he struggled to regain composure. Without hesitation, she sprinted across the exposed ground, low and agile, using the remnants of debris for cover. Each movement was calculated to minimize risk while maximizing effectiveness. She reached him, offering her arm and guiding him to safer ground. He glanced at her with wide eyes, a mixture of awe and relief, understanding that his life had just been spared by her courage. Emily did not pause. Her focus was total, her awareness encompassing every angle, every shadow, every possible threat. She moved fluidly, covering her soldiers as they advanced. A sniper's rifle glinted from a rooftop 2 streets over. Emily identified the line of sight, noted the angle of approach, and signaled a nearby marksman to suppress fire. The enemy's aim faltered under the coordinated response, leaving the sniper momentarily exposed. Emily seized the opportunity, directing a precise maneuver that forced the sniper to retreat. Every action, every signal, reinforced her control and the safety of those under her protection. She noticed a group of civilians trapped near the marketplace, frozen by fear as stray gunfire cracked around them. Emily's mind calculated their path to safety. She directed 2 soldiers to provide covering fire while she moved toward the civilians, low and deliberate, using debris as shields. Her eyes constantly flicked toward potential threats, ensuring that no enemy could exploit her movements. She reached the civilians, guiding them with firm but gentle commands. Stay low. Follow me. Move quickly. Their terrified eyes mirrored the chaos around them, but Emily's calm reassured them. Every second of guidance mattered. Even as she moved, Emily's tactical mind remained in overdrive. She anticipated enemy reactions, calculated trajectories, and coordinated her team's movements in real time. One insurgent, desperate to regain control, lunged from behind a crumbling wall. Emily reacted instinctively, stepping aside while redirecting his momentum. He stumbled, falling into rubble, neutralized without lethal force. Another insurgent attempted to flank her position, only to be met with precise suppressive fire, coordinated by her hand signals. Her orchestration of every action left the enemy disoriented, panicked, and unable to mount effective resistance. Emily's body moved with a rare combination of speed, precision, and grace. Each motion was economical, designed to maximize effect while minimizing exposure. She used leverage, cover, and timing to maintain an unbroken line of control. Her team followed her lead without hesitation, each soldier executing maneuvers as if guided by instinct. Emily was no longer simply a participant in the battle. She was the conductor, orchestrating every movement, every suppression, every advance. The alley, the rubble, the smoke, they all became instruments in her tactical symphony. A particularly dangerous moment arose when a trapped soldier screamed, drawing the attention of a nearby insurgent hidden in a collapsed building. Emily pivoted instantly, assessing both the threat and the safest route to her comrade. She sprinted across open ground, bullets whizzing past, using the crumbling architecture as cover. Every step was precise, calculated to minimize risk. She reached the soldier, placed him behind cover, and delivered a whispered, steadying command. "I've got you. Stay down. We move together." The soldier's fear transformed into trust, an extension of her unwavering presence. Emily then turned her attention to the remaining insurgents, who were attempting to regroup near a half-destroyed market stall. She assessed their positions, noting that they were vulnerable, uncoordinated, and increasingly desperate. She signaled her team to flank, while she advanced with precise, deliberate steps to maintain dominance. A barrage of suppressive fire forced the insurgents to scatter, while Emily moved to control the central position. Her presence alone dictated the pace and flow of the battlefield, leaving the enemy unable to formulate any coherent response. The civilians she had guided were now moving safely under the protection of her team. Emily ensured every movement was synchronized, accounting for potential threats and ensuring no one was exposed unnecessarily. Her tactical awareness extended beyond the immediate threats, considering reinforcements, hidden snipers, and environmental hazards. Every decision, every motion, every glance was calibrated to maintain control and maximize safety. She was simultaneously a leader, protector, and strategist. At one point, Emily spotted a young insurgent attempting to escape through a side alley, carrying a weapon. Without hesitation, she signaled her team to intercept while she moved to cut off the path. Her movement was fluid, almost instinctive, maintaining cover while positioning herself to control the enemy's options. The insurgent hesitated, realizing the inevitability of capture. Emily's presence, her decisiveness, and her control had turned fear into compliance without unnecessary violence. Her team secured him while she remained alert, scanning for any other potential threats. As the firefight continued to subside, Emily's awareness never faltered. She moved through the alley, checking positions, ensuring no enemy combatants remained capable of regrouping. Every corner, every shadow, every rubble pile was accounted for. Her soldiers followed, coordinating with her guidance, and the civilians she had protected were evacuated safely. Emily's composure under fire had not only neutralized the threat, but inspired her team to act with precision and confidence. Amidst the smoke, dust, and lingering echoes of gunfire, Emily Carter stood as a symbol of bravery and leadership. She had turned a life-threatening situation into a coordinated, controlled operation, saving her team, neutralizing enemy combatants, and protecting civilians. Her tactical mind, courage under pressure, and unyielding composure had transformed chaos into order. Every soldier under her command knew they owed their safety to her decisiveness. In that moment, Emily's heroism became more than physical courage. It was mental fortitude, rapid decision-making, and absolute situational awareness. Every action she had taken demonstrated the profound impact a single, trained, and fearless individual could have on the course of an engagement. She had moved beyond mere survival. She had become the embodiment of leadership under fire. The remaining insurgents were demoralized, their attempts to resist futile against her orchestrated control. Her team advanced steadily, securing strategic positions and ensuring all threats were neutralized. Emily's actions had prevented potential casualties and maintained civilian safety, showcasing a rare combination of tactical brilliance and humanitarian responsibility. She moved fluidly between roles: fighter, strategist, protector, and leader, her presence dictating the flow of the battlefield. As the last insurgent either surrendered or fled, Emily took a moment to survey the aftermath. The alley, once a scene of imminent death, was now under control. Her soldiers gathered, some catching their breath, others maintaining watchful vigilance. Civilians emerged from hiding, their eyes wide with relief. Emily remained focused, scanning the area for potential threats, coordinating movement, and ensuring her team remained prepared for any unforeseen developments. In those intense hours, Sergeant Emily Carter had demonstrated heroism under fire in its purest form. Her courage, decisiveness, and tactical expertise had turned the chaos into order, fear into confidence, and vulnerability into control. The battlefield, once a place of imminent threat, had been transformed by her presence into a coordinated, disciplined, and secure environment. She had not only survived, she had led, protected, and dominated. The battle that had begun with death looming over Sergeant Emily Carter's head had finally reached a tense stillness. Dust settled over the alleyways, filling the air with a dry, metallic scent, and the occasional echo of distant gunfire reminded all that the wider conflict was still ongoing. The insurgents had either surrendered, fled, or been neutralized. Yet despite the apparent calm, Emily's eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, every rooftop. Victory was never absolute until the battlefield was fully secured, and she knew better than anyone that complacency could be fatal. Her soldiers moved carefully, sweeping the area and securing strategic positions. Their weapons were raised, but controlled, eyes alert. Emily guided them silently with subtle hand signals, the language of command she had perfected through countless drills. Each motion communicated precision, order, and tactical expectation. Civilians cautiously emerged from their hiding spots, their faces pale and terrified, but the presence of Emily and her team gave them a fragile sense of safety. Their trust was implicit, earned in the heat of survival. Emily moved among her soldiers, checking positions, ensuring all angles were covered. Every debris pile, every shattered wall, every narrow alley was accounted for. The village was a mosaic of chaos, yet she imposed structure on it through sheer presence and authority. Each team member knew their role, their purpose, and their priorities. Emily's calm confidence became a force multiplier, amplifying their effectiveness in ways that sheer numbers could not achieve. The insurgents who had surrendered were now disarmed, their hands raised in reluctant compliance. Emily observed them carefully, noting expressions of fear, disbelief, and frustration. Some of them had underestimated her, expecting a terrified, compliant target, and instead faced a soldier whose composure and tactical acumen had turned the tables completely. She maintained her focus, ensuring they were secured without unnecessary confrontation, understanding that discipline and controlled force were as crucial as aggression. Emily approached the first insurgent she had neutralized during the fight, now subdued but conscious. He avoided her gaze, a mixture of fear and grudging respect evident on his face. Her voice was calm but authoritative. "You followed the wrong orders. Stay down, and no one gets hurt." Her tone carried weight, projecting control without needing to escalate further. In these moments, leadership extended beyond combat skill. It was about presence, clarity, and the ability to instill compliance through authority alone. Her attention shifted to the civilians, who were now gathering cautiously at the edges of the alley. Emily moved among them, offering words of reassurance and brief instructions. "Stay low. Follow the team to safety. Keep moving until you reach the cleared zone." Even amidst her adrenaline, she recognized that her responsibility extended beyond neutralizing threats. She had to safeguard those caught in the crossfire. Her focus on civilian protection reinforced the trust her team and the villagers placed in her. Emily's team had begun collecting weapons and securing vital positions to prevent any remaining insurgents from regrouping. Her eyes noted small details, a loose brick that could be a trap, a shadow that could conceal a hidden threat, and a faint movement that suggested someone trying to sneak away. Nothing escaped her attention. Victory in combat was not just about the collapse of the enemy, but about maintaining control until the battlefield was fully secure. She paused briefly, surveying the aftermath. The alley was littered with debris, shattered glass, and remnants of the firefight. Smoke drifted lazily from broken walls, and the occasional flicker of sunlight caught on metal fragments scattered across the ground. The chaos of the previous hours contrasted sharply with the controlled order she had imposed. Every insurgent was either contained or incapacitated, every civilian accounted for, and her team was operating with near-perfect cohesion. Emily reflected on the sequence of events that had led to this point. Seconds of intense danger, decisions made in fractions of a heartbeat, and precise execution of strategy had transformed what could have been catastrophe into complete tactical dominance. The insurgents' collapse had not been purely physical. It was psychological, a result of her unwavering control and decisive action. Fear, uncertainty, and hesitation had spread through their ranks, leaving them vulnerable and disoriented. She turned her attention to the village itself, assessing structural damage, potential hazards, and paths of retreat that the enemy might exploit if they attempted to regroup elsewhere. Her mind cataloged these details, planning for follow-up actions and ensuring that her team was aware of potential contingencies. Her tactical awareness extended beyond the immediate encounter, anticipating possible reinforcements, hidden threats, and civilian movement patterns. Every factor mattered in the aftermath of combat. A subtle movement caught her attention, a young child peering from a partially collapsed doorway. Emily approached cautiously, offering a gentle smile and reassuring words. "You're safe now. Stay with the team." Her ability to transition seamlessly from battlefield strategist to compassionate protector reinforced her authority. Leadership, she understood, was not just about directing soldiers. It was about instilling trust, confidence, and calm in those who depended on you. Emily's team began gathering the surrendered insurgents, securing them in a temporary holding area while maintaining vigilance. Her hand signals directed movement, positioning, and prioritization of threats. She ensured that each soldier understood their role, creating a controlled environment that minimized risk and maximized operational efficiency. The collapse of the enemy had shifted from tactical dominance to total containment, a testament to her foresight and decisiveness. Even as the adrenaline of combat began to fade, Emily's focus did not waver. She reviewed every action, every decision, and every outcome in her mind, anticipating the next steps and ensuring her team's preparedness for any unforeseen developments. Victory was not merely the absence of enemy threat. It was the presence of order, security, and control. She had achieved all three. Her gaze fell on the captured insurgents, noting their expressions of fear, confusion, and disbelief. They had come expecting to dominate, to exploit weakness, and instead found themselves overpowered by a single soldier whose composure, tactical acumen, and leadership had dictated the outcome. Emily's influence had extended beyond her immediate actions. It had reshaped the behavior, confidence, and morale of everyone on the battlefield. Civilians were guided to safe zones, soldiers regrouped and accounted for, and the insurgents were contained. Emily moved among her team, offering brief instructions, encouragement, and feedback. Her calm authority reassured her soldiers, reinforcing the cohesion that had allowed them to execute her commands flawlessly. In these moments, leadership extended beyond strategy. It was about presence, trust, and the ability to inspire confidence in others. As the smoke began to clear, Emily took a final survey of the alley. Rubble, debris, and the remnants of battle littered the ground, but the area was secure. Civilians were safe, insurgents contained, and her team was fully operational. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and the effectiveness of her leadership. What had begun as seconds of mortal danger had evolved into a complete tactical victory, achieved through skill, decisiveness, and unwavering composure. Emily Carter had transformed the battlefield through her actions. She had neutralized threats, protected civilians, coordinated her team with precision, and ensured total control of the operational environment. Her heroism under fire had extended beyond personal survival. It had reshaped the entire engagement. Every decision, every movement, every breath had contributed to the ultimate success. And as she stood at the center of the secured alley, Sergeant Emily Carter understood the magnitude of what had been accomplished. The insurgents' collapse, the safety of the civilians, the cohesion of her team, all were the result of her presence, strategy, and courage. The battlefield had shifted in her favor, and the aftermath of victory was a testament to her extraordinary skill, leadership, and resolve. The alley had transformed from a deadly trap into a stage of calculated dominance, with dust settling and sunlight streaming over rubble-strewn streets. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at its center, surveying her team, the subdued insurgents, and the civilians she had protected. The battlefield that had threatened to claim her life only hours ago was now firmly under her command. Yet Emily knew that true control extended beyond immediate victory. It required anticipating the aftermath, securing positions, and ensuring no threat could regain foothold. Her eyes, sharp and scanning, captured every detail, every shadow, every potential movement. Her soldiers moved efficiently under her guidance, securing weapons, tending to the wounded, and checking strategic points around the village. Emily's hand signals orchestrated the operation like a silent symphony, her authority unspoken yet unmistakable. Even the most experienced members of her team followed without hesitation, their trust absolute. Emily had not only neutralized the threat, but had elevated her team's effectiveness, turning their instinctual training into a seamless, coordinated force. She had taken the battlefield and molded it according to her vision. The captured insurgents were lined along a cleared wall, their expressions a mixture of fear, disbelief, and grudging respect. They had expected to dominate, to intimidate, to exploit weakness, and instead faced a soldier whose precision, calm, and tactical brilliance had upended their plans entirely. Emily's presence radiated authority. She approached the first insurgent, maintaining a steady, commanding gaze. You had every opportunity to surrender earlier. Compliance now will ensure no further harm. Resist, and you will face consequences. Her tone was firm but controlled, projecting dominance without unnecessary escalation. Emily then turned her attention to the civilians still emerging from hiding. Children clutched the hands of their parents, faces wide with awe and lingering fear. Emily knelt, making herself approachable, yet still exuding confidence. You're safe now. Stay with the team and follow instructions, she instructed. Her words were calm, her demeanor unwavering, and the effect was immediate. The civilians, sensing the protection her presence provided, followed cautiously, gaining reassurance in her authority. Her heroism extended beyond combat. It was about instilling trust, guiding the vulnerable, and creating order in chaos. Her mind remained active, scanning for threats, even as the immediate conflict had subsided. Small details, loose bricks, dark shadows, flickers of movement were all catalogued for tactical assessment. She directed her team to secure vantage points along the rooftops and alleys, ensuring that no residual threats could regroup unnoticed. Each action was deliberate, methodical, and calculated. Victory, she knew, was not final until the environment itself was secured and stabilized. Emily's control extended from the immediate to the strategic, encompassing the full scope of her operational awareness. One insurgent, shaking and defiant, attempted a last-minute movement toward a hidden weapon. Emily reacted instantly, positioning herself between him and potential danger. Her voice carried authority, low and unwavering. Stop, now. Her stance, precise and commanding, communicated control without need for further violence. The insurgent froze, understanding that resistance was futile. Emily had not only dominated through action, but had imposed psychological control, fear, and respect intertwined, ensuring compliance and neutralizing risk. Her team followed her subtle gestures, converging to secure the remaining insurgent without incident. Weapons were collected, positions rechecked, and the alley secured from potential threats. Emily's tactical foresight had transformed an environment of imminent death into a fully controlled operational zone. Her authority was absolute, extending across the battlefield through strategic positioning, disciplined coordination, and psychological dominance. The insurgents, civilians, and soldiers alike operated within the boundaries she had imposed. Emily then assessed the broader environment. The village beyond the alley had been impacted by the firefight-damaged buildings, scattered debris, and structural hazards, but no civilians remained in immediate danger. She guided her team through reconnaissance, ensuring that any potential enemy reinforcements, hidden caches, or traps were neutralized. Each step reinforced control over both the physical space and the psychological state of those involved. Victory was not merely the absence of immediate threat, it was the imposition of order where chaos had reigned. As she moved through the alley, Emily's leadership extended to morale. Her soldiers, fatigued but disciplined, observed her composure and clarity. She provided succinct instructions, reassured them of their safety, and reminded them to maintain vigilance. Her calm authority inspired confidence, turning fear into purpose. Each team member operated with heightened efficiency, their movements synchronized through her guidance. Emily's presence was the axis around which every action rotated, the invisible force directing the flow of control across the battlefield. The captured insurgents, now fully subdued, reflected the collapse of both their physical and psychological resistance. Emily knew that her actions had left an indelible impression on them. Every hesitation, every misstep, every reaction had been anticipated and countered. Her mastery of timing, positioning, and control had rendered their aggression ineffective, their cohesion shattered. She had transformed seconds of mortal danger into a demonstration of precision, strategy, and unyielding authority. Emily paused to consider the civilians again. Their fear, though palpable, had been replaced by tentative trust. She assigned soldiers to escort them to safe zones and provided instructions to ensure their continued protection. Her role was not complete until every non-combatant was accounted for and secured. Heroism, she knew, extended beyond personal courage. It was the protection of others and the imposition of safety through skill, decisiveness, and leadership. A final sweep of the alley revealed no hidden threats. Debris, rubble, and remnants of the firefight remained, but the insurgents had been contained or neutralized. Civilians were safe, and her team maintained perfect situational awareness. Emily's calm composure, tactical precision, and authoritative presence had transformed a scenario of imminent death into complete control. Every heartbeat, every breath, every decision had contributed to this outcome. The alley, once a symbol of danger and vulnerability, now bore witness to her dominance. Emily's leadership had not only saved lives, but had also established psychological and strategic superiority. Enemy forces had collapsed under her influence. Civilians had been guided to safety, and her team had executed flawlessly under her direction. The ultimate control had been achieved. Every element of the battlefield conformed to her strategy. Every variable accounted for, and every threat neutralized. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the alley, Emily surveyed her team. Exhaustion and adrenaline intermingled on their faces, yet their posture reflected confidence and cohesion. They had witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of decisive leadership and the power of composure under extreme pressure. Emily's presence had inspired, guided, and directed them with unparalleled precision. In her hands, chaos had been transformed into order. Finally, Emily allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. She looked at the subdued insurgents, the civilians she had protected, and the secured environment around her. The seconds that had once threatened her life had become instruments of her control. Fear had been transformed into authority, vulnerability into dominance, and uncertainty into structured, strategic victory. Emily Carter had not only survived, she had orchestrated the battlefield, secured lives, and asserted absolute command. And as she stood at the center of the alley, sunlight catching on dust and debris, Emily understood the full measure of her achievement. The ultimate control had been attained not through brute force alone, but through awareness, precision, leadership, and unwavering courage. The insurgents' collapse, the civilians' safety, and her team's cohesion were all the result of her strategic brilliance and heroic resolve. In those final moments, she realized that true mastery on the battlefield was as much mental and psychological as it was physical, a testament to her extraordinary skill and composure.